A time series graph is something we see all the time. Very useful, help us study how things are changing over time. So this is Klamath County room tax totals that have been from 1997 to 2008, and we can see some increase going on, but without a visual this is a little bit difficult for us to manage. So we want to create a visual of making a time series graph, and all we want to do is highlight this data, hit insert, make a line graph, and we can make our line graph come about. Just that simple. It really is that simple. What you don't want to do is highlight both values. If you was to make the mistake of highlighting both the x and the y and do insert and make a line graph, what you're going to end up with is two series of data, and we don't really want that to happen, so we won't do that. So we're going to just highlight the one piece of data. Let's not make this hard. This is piece O cake, so let's just keep it that way. Only thing that's missing here is our labels on the bottom. We want to select our data for the axis labels, and we're going to change it to the years. Hit OK, and now have my years, and one more time we're going to give it that format to have it align on the tick marks, and there we have it. So now we have a beautiful time series graph. We could delete that, and I can make this happen. So what we can watch happen here is from 1997, we're getting this amount of revenue, and then something happened here. So this is very nice to see, because if I'm trying to predict what's going to happen in the future, back in here this is very predictable, very stable, and we could see what was going to happen. So if we're trying to make predictions, see what's going on, it's very visual. Over here we kind of see it's increasing, but we don't see how steadily it actually was increasing, so we could have done a very good prediction of what we would have expected in a subsequent year. The next plot that we want to work on is called a scatter plot. So a scatter plot would be something where we're comparing an x value with a y value, and we have what's called an independent variable and a dependent variable. This is accidents of personal watercraft. So if we have a certain number of accidents that was investigated, and out of those investigations it yielded 5 fatalities that happened in those times. A different year at a different time, there was 650 accidents that yielded 20 fatalities. What we can establish is we're trying to say, is there a relationship between the number of accidents and fatalities? So what we do is we put this on a scatter plot. In this case, we have an x and a y axis, and we're going to do a scatter plot. So we select both the x and the y's, and we want to then insert, and we're going to say scatter plot. Make it look something like this, and we can establish a pattern that says, hey, you know what? The more accidents you have, the y-axis, the more fatalities you're going to have. Kind of makes sense, but not everything comes out on a scatter plot that you'd be the way that you'd think it would happen. If you wanted to, you could add a trend line, so we could prove to ourselves that we had, we can show the display the R value. We could say, you know what, this is actually a pretty darn good fit. We can be pretty good predictors of, if we knew there was going to be some number of accidents, how many fatalities. So we could look at prevention in a way that we'd say, well, if we can just reduce the number of accidents, we're probably going to reduce the fatalities. 9 times out of 10, it's a little more complicated than that, but be a simplistic approach. One more thing that we want to look at is pie graphs and also Pareto charts. Pareto charts and pie graphs lend themselves to be used in a very similar timing. And a Pareto chart is basically a histogram where my X label is non-numeric. So more qualitative than quantitative. So I have here an example of where lost people are found. They're found in structures, roads. Actually, this is actually lost hunters, if the truth be known, from Kester in 2008. And this is where people are found when we go find missing persons. And this is percentages here. So 8% of the time we find them in structures, 33% we find them in roads. And I want to put this in some kind of a bar form. So what I probably should do to help myself out here, I'm going to copy this data, I'm going to put it over here, and there's some of them that have blanks in it, so I'm going to get rid of those so that we don't have these blanks set up. And we'll move everything up and put that guy there, and so now we've got everybody accounted for. Okay, now what we would do for a Pareto chart is we would just take these numbers here, and then we're going to say insert we're going to do a column graph, and we're going to do it like this. Now, just like a histogram, we want the labels to go, we want the gaps to go away because that would represent in between here nothing happened. So what we would do is we would format the data series, and I want no gaps. Now, this is, and then I can obviously adjust my labels here. So I would want to select the data and edit, and I want this to become these values. And so I'd have structure. We found, oops, well, that didn't work out very well now, did it? Okay, so we want to format the data series, no gaps, and then we want to select the data, put our labels back in there that I had. Okay, and we are good. The issue here is this is difficult for us to read because numerically we would order things from smallest to largest, but in qualitative data, structures are not more important than roads. So this is out of order, if you will. There's really no order to this. So what we want to do in a Pareto chart is we want to order this beforehand so that I always have the largest bar on the left and it stair steps down. So what we're going to do to make this right is I'm going to get rid of this graph that is wrong, and I'm going to then highlight on the numbers, and I'm going to sort it. I'm going to sort it from largest to smallest because I want my biggest one first. So I'm going to sort it. Excel automatically says, do I want to expand the selection? We want to say yes because I want the label to go with it, because road was where we found most of the people. So I have that label that sets up like that. Now is when I want to insert my column chart, so that now I'm going to have a Pareto chart that is going to be appropriate. So I'm getting rid of the gaps, making it go away, adding my labels. I want to select the data, add my labels, make it good, and we are set. So now I have road is where I find 33% of the people, and this should really be percentages here, but it's somewhat implied by the graph in this case. So I have this setup that comes down. I can see where, well, I'm going to find people hiding under a rock the least, and I'm going to find them walking on the road or hanging out on the road the most. Maybe I should spend my time looking there as opposed to under a rock. Another thing that we can do with these graphs, again, Pareto charts and pie graphs tend to lend themselves very well to being paired together using the same style, is if I select the data, all of it, with labels and everything this time, and I do insert and make it a pie graph, I can make it a pie chart very quickly. And it gives me the same information. I would argue that the pie graph is a little bit easier to read than the Pareto chart. One thing about Excel is that when you select on these, you do have chart layouts. I can immediately select just by clicking there. I can choose different views that I'd want it to be. I can make it just the percentages. I can make it percentages and labels, just the labels. I can make it something very easy to read. One thing to notice, though, is that in this case I did have it ordered. The pie chart will always come in the order starting up here at 12 o'clock, if you will, going clockwise, starting with road, water. If I would have done it in a different order, it wouldn't have sorted it from least to, or most to least. It would have always sorted it from the first one starting here and going clockwise is how Excel will do that.